Okay, so yeah, Survivor. I had seen the show Survivor. I think the first season it was on, and then I might have seen it like one or two other times. Like I wasn't. I think maybe one other season I actually followed it religiously, and then outside of that, I might just like catch in the end like who won. And it's like I thought the show was kind of interesting, but I was like, oh, this is another reality show. But for some reason, last summer, again, like my best friend, she came out to California and she was my roommate. Like, we just had such a good time. And so she came out and we were like addicted to Survivor. I don't even know how we started watching. I think it was a recent one that was on, and then we watched a little bit of that, and we were like, we should go watch some like old seasons. So it was like so we would always like make dinner and then pull it up on the internet or whatever, and pick a place and everything, and it became like seriously one of my favorite shows ever. And this is why. You have people who are completely taken out of their comfort zone, very similar to what I'm experiencing. Taken out of your comfort zone, and you're stripped down, like you don't have like any of your creature comforts and everything, that you have at home. You're with a bunch of strangers. The game is always happening, you know, and it's called Survivor. And the key components of the game is to outwit, outplay, and outlast. And it's so interesting because each game is different. Like they're put on this like deserted island. They got to make a life for themselves. They got to get along with everybody else. They got to like know how to take care of the campsite. You then compete in these physical challenges. Sometimes you might get like a reward. Like food or pillows or something because you're stranded or whatever, and you got to like earn everything in order to survive. And then sometimes you don't get those things, and people will go for like days without eating or days without drinking water, and it starts to play on you. And then I like how there's like two tribes, so you have a tribe and kind of the dynamics of your tribe to survive and to compete and everything. And then the person who like loses, or the tribe that loses the physical challenges, then has to go on to tribal council, and that's where you vote out, one person, uh, and then it narrows down to the end, and eventually it becomes an individual game. Like usually, like the tribes will merge, and then it's an individual game, but people have alliances, and then the at the end, it's like the last, I think, 6 people or so. You have a jury. So, like, let's say you end up being like some of the last like 12 people or something. Then now, as you vote out people, those people go into the jury, and then the power of the game shifts, and the people in the jury, have to vote at the end between like whether it's 2 people or 3 people. They get to vote and decide who gets the $1 million. And the person, people who get to the end, it's like they got to make this plea to the jury as to why, to give them, this money or whatever. And a lot of times it's like the same people that you voted out are now holding your fate and everything. So it's so interesting because it's like a lot of people think it's just about the physicality of the whole competition, because they do some serious challenges. I don't know how they do that, and if you have been training and eating, but these people, they haven't been eating very well or drinking or sleeping very well, and they have to go out and do these crazy physical challenges. But that's the thing. It's rarely the person who is best physically, or I will even say might even be 50-50. Like, just because you're strong physically does not mean you end up winning the game. And actually, that could really hurt you if you're very physically strong. And it's interesting, too, because they're out in the middle of nature. So it's like people's intuition, like, is so heightened. So it's so interesting to see, like, who listens to their intuition, who doesn't. And then you got to strategize. And I don't know, I just became, like, so into this game. And it's so different every time in, like, people's personalities and stuff like that. And you got to know, like, when to have a short game, when to have a long game, who to trust, who, understanding people's motives. So I was just so inspired by this, and it just reminded me, like, of my situation. And so I started thinking about all the survivors who I like are very memorable. And I mean, I'm gonna get really corny survivor on you. So like people who like the show, this is all for you. People who don't, like whatever. But I loved like Boston Rob, Ozzy, Sari, Parvati, Sarah, Russell Hands, and Kim, who won, this last time. And there are other people too who I really liked, but I just can't think of their names. And I looked at like the qualities that these people had in their game, and I started applying that to like what was going to be my survivor plan to outwit, outplay, and outlast this psycho dude, SKB. So I started to like be resourceful, and I started sending out emails to people. I started sending out, posting stuff on message boards and like asking about my visa and being like, this is a situation, X, Y, Z. And a lot of people were answering and responding and giving like excellent information, and then I started like looking at the job postings on the expat website because this guy Alan, he's like this older British man. He lives in between London and Indonesia, and he had been in contact with me before I got here, and he was like, go on the job site and just come to these networking events. Like, I know it's hard, I know you're tired, and I know, he's like, if you can just like come out, he's like, I'll introduce you to people. So I'm like, okay, bet I'm gonna be there next week. Started sitting on my resume, and then I'm like, you know what? My intuition was like, yeah, contact this lady who you had contacted before. There was this woman who had posted, or somebody had posted a job posting in Indonesia. I started the process. I had sent her all my information. We were 2 days away, or even like 1 day away, I think, from setting up a Skype interview. And then the reason we didn't have a Skype interview is because the next day I was offered, an opportunity to come and consider this SKB school. So, I didn't follow up with this lady. So, usually you think like, oh man, this is when your mind's like, oh, you dropped the ball. Oh, well, see, that's why you're in the position you're in. And, like that's when your ego is like just trying to, talk you out of your guidance. But my gut was saying like, hey, contact her. Because maybe the fact that you're in Indonesia and you already have a place to live, that might make you even more like of an appealing candidate. So I contacted her. I contacted her. Sent my resume out, posted, message boards, like on this website and everything. Do you know that next morning I had like several interview opportunities and potential jobs. Granted, I had been praying, asking God for help, angels for help, Jesus, Mary, Amma, Buddha, like, hey, anyone, like everybody, like of course in the light, and all that. But, like please help me and everything, and I just like completely surrendered to whatever was going to happen. Because I said, this dude is not going to have any power over me. Like I got to get my strength up, but I'm taking back my power. He's not going to, call the shots and like run the show. So next morning, the lady who I contacted, back in the States about the job, she was like, oh my God, you're here? And she's like, oh, that's great. And she's like, yeah, we can definitely, sit down and talk about things and, see what we can figure out. And she's like, yeah, the reason I didn't call you back for the interview is because we didn't have room in our teacher house. So it's like, here I'm thinking I dropped the ball. Here she's thinking like she dropped the ball or whatever. And then it's like full circle moment. Then guess what happens? Diana, the friend of mine, who I hadn't met yet, the other blogger, Jamaican, New York girl, I'm talking to her and I'm like, oh my God, is your school hiring? Because I remember she said her school was hiring. And I was like, oh, I found this other place and, I think it's going to work out. And I, start describing the school with her. Why is it the same school that Diana works? So now me and Diana are going to get a chance to work together. Yay! So that was really cool. So anyway, let's see what happened next. Oh, then I ended up getting an interview with TV1 Indonesia. It's like this major like multimedia company, television station, and they were like looking for a legal secretary because obviously, I mean, I can't practice law, in Indonesia. And they were looking for a legal secretary and an executive assistant to like the board of directors of the television station. So this was someone through that expat site. So he was like, "Oh yeah, I'd love to like speak with you, and yada yada yada. And can you do this work and that work?" But I was like, "Whoa, wait a minute now. Like, again, I did not come here to like go full on a career of that nature. Maybe a year or two ago I would have. Maybe a year from now I will. But like right now, I'm focused on teaching and my creative projects. That's my focus because for too long, I would put, you know, other opportunities ahead of my heart's desire. And that was just like a huge lesson, that I needed to learn. And I'm glad that I learned it here.